been, I guess we have come to the last Sunday on 10 Commitments. It's been 10th week already. I guess time truly flies. This is, I guess, I came here in August, right? August, September, October, November. This is my 4th month being here. I really enjoy being in Colorado because, especially the mountains, and we have, really great trails here. So I've been taking on those trails at least twice a week. There's a 4.2 mile moderate trail called Templeton Trail, about only like 6 minutes from the church. I finally conquered the trail. I did a whole 4.2 mile. It took me about almost 2 hours. It was great. My next challenge is there's a trail called Dixon Trail. Has anybody done Dixon Trail? No? It's it's 9 mile. It's a round trip. It's in the Cheyenne, the state park. It's recently opened up, and it's labeled as advanced and also treacherous. It's a 7-hour trail. That's my sort of goal for next year, next summer. I'm hoping to be able to do that. We have my third child, Jamie, is here. She's such an outdoor person, and she's been hiking up all the mountains in Washington, Seattle, Washington area, and hope that she can go there, go on the trail with me. So if something happens, she can rescue me. And also, another thing that I like about Colorado is especially this area. Everything is 6 minutes. The Kmart is not Kmart, but Target is 6 minutes, and you have so many hamburger restaurants. Did you know that? I never noticed there were so many. There's like In-N-Outs. That's give it In-N-Out, Whataburger, not to mention Burger King and McDonald's. There are a host of other things. And recently, Pastor Sung introduced me to this place called Bad Daddy. Bad Daddy, yeah. There's like dozens of hamburger places. So, it's like so great. I get to choose and taste different burgers every week. So I'm really enjoying kind of my life here. But Mr. Graz and Mrs. Graz just went to Europe. Is that for a month? For a month? Yeah, for a month. If I coveted their trip and thinking that, gosh, why couldn't I go to Europe? Why couldn't I be there? Why could my daughter send us to Europe, If that's all that I was thinking about, then I would not have been able to enjoy, these wonderful trails and wonderful hamburger places, right? The 10th commandment, not to covet what other people have. The main point is the coveting takes away, this wonderful opportunity that God has given to us to enjoy the blessings that God has given to me. Once you start, envying what other people have, you're losing this opportunity to enjoy the blessings that God has given to you. There was a school teacher. Her name was Tiffany, Miss Tiffany. Was a young, passionate school teacher. Was just assigned to a school in Alaska. And when she got there, she was, fired up for her work. This is a really area where, far away from the cities, the kids don't get to get the benefit of, being near cities and, more kind of modern stuff. So she was committed to giving the best education that she could bring to these kids. The Christmas was coming, and so she planned on Christmas pageant. And she was planning, plays and songs and everything. So she wanted to really, to teach, have the kids experience the meaning of Christmas, and also, give the opportunity for their parents to have the experience the joy of Christmas, right? So she was ordered all these materials, and one of the things that she ordered was a play script. She wanted, for kids to have a nice skit. So she ordered this play script on the red-nosed reindeer Rudolph. And by doing that, she wanted to teach the kids, how blessed they were, how talented they were. Each of them is being unique, God's wonderful creation, all that stuff. So she got the script, and she was reading it. She was introducing the script to the kids. As she was reading, and this is what we're going to do, and telling the kids, that's what they're going to do. And she came to a part where it described the props that are needed for the play. And in one section, it says, for reindeer horns, use tree branches. For reindeer play, so you need reindeer horns. But it says, use tree branches. And she looked out the window, and it was Alaska tundra. Not a single tree in like 100 miles. When she realized that, she kind of, with a deep sigh, she told the kids, hey, I don't think we'll be able to do this play because, we cannot come up with reindeer horns. And there was a big disappointment in the classroom. Everyone kind of quieted down, huge silence for a couple of minutes. And then one kid raised his hand and said, but teacher, we have real reindeer horns. It was Alaska. So they have a real horns, right? So, but if you just if they were focused on what other people have, trees, if their thinking went on like, why don't we have trees? Like other people in other parts of the world, in other parts of America, they would not have been able to found that wonderful blessing that God has given to them, the real reindeer horns. God's present grace, what the Bible tells us is that God's grace is sufficient for us. A lot of times we feel that we were lacking in so many different ways, but God has given us enough grace for us to enjoy this life, but also at the same time use them to glorify God if we look right. So the key is to be content with what God has given to you. Be content. And that's what Paul says. God's grace is sufficient. And with that grace, hopefully we can, find a heart full of contentment that we can truly enjoy what God has given to us, but also be able to use that for the glory of God. There was a man who found the magic lamp with genie trapped in it. Those Aladdin thing, right? He found this lamp, and it's one of those things. If you rub it, genie will come out and will grant you 3 wishes, right? What a lucky man! And so he was so happy. And he was full of hope that his life will dramatically change now. So he rubbed the lamp, and the genie came up, and he said, Master, what can I do for you? And he thought about what his first wish should be, and he realized that all his misery was caused by his wife. He thought that he married the wrong person. That's all this unhappiness and all miseries in his life. That's where everything began. So his first wish was for his wife to die. And the genie said, all right, that's your wish, then that'll be granted. And the next day, voila, when he woke up, his wife was dead, natural death. So it was good. So he was preparing her funeral, but he had to hide his smile and gladness of this tragic thing happening. But anyway, he was preparing the funerals, and his neighbors and relatives would come and stop by to pay their to say their condolences and also pay their last respect. And every one of them, without an exception, was telling him how wonderful his wife was. How kind she was, what a great sense of humor she had, and what a diligent person she was, how warm-hearted she was, and everyone was telling him that, there's anyone like her. And after a couple of days of hearing that, he realized that he made a big mistake. So he rubbed his lamp again, and genie came up, and he said, bring my wife back. That was the second wish. So his wife came back to life. And now he had a big sort of dilemma here. I mean, he wasted away 2 wishes, right? Nothing changed. And he's just only 1 wish left. So he didn't want to waste that. So he wanted to be, he was thinking and thinking what my 3rd wish should be. He couldn't just come up with, anything. So he finally just asked the genie to rub the lamp, and genie came up and he asked the genie, what should I do? What should I wish? What should my 3rd wish to be? Just, can you give me a hint? And the genie said, wish to be content. Wish to be content. Be content is really a key thing because God's grace is sufficient to us. And one of the things that we have to remember, one of the things that if we remember, I think will really help us in our lives. Will be, it's not to compare with other people. It's the comparison, the comparing that always brings this envy and the coveting in our lives. Comparing always makes trouble, right? Be content with what God has given to you. Look for the graces that's already in your life. There was a Ajumma, the Korean woman living in Korea, whose dream was to have her own house. As the 1960s, in Korea, not many people owned their house, but she wanted, her house. So she worked very, very hard to save enough money to buy a house. And finally, after several years of working hard, she bought a house. She was able to buy a house, and she was so happy, so happy. And 1 week after, she happened to visit her friend who was living in an apartment. And there was very few apartments at that time, in Korea. And this apartment has an indoor plumbing. So a lot of houses in Korea in 1960, they had outdoor the toilet. And when she saw, that's how her house was. But when she saw her friend's apartment with the indoor plumbing, she realized that, how convenient that could be. So, instead of being content with the house that she got with the outdoor plumbing, she found a new goal in her life. That is to buy an apartment with the indoor plumbing. So she worked so hard. And again, it's getting up early in the morning, working till late at night. So she wasn't able to, come home that often. But she worked very hard to save money. And finally, she was able to buy an apartment with the indoor plumbing. And she was so happy for a week. And she ended up visiting another friend of hers in another apartment. And this one had 2 bathrooms. And she realized that, that is really convenient. I mean, how it's like if you just have 1 bathroom in the morning, it's a war zone, right? Your kids have to go to school, and your spouse has to go to work, and then everyone wants to use the bathroom. And if just 1 tiny bathroom, that's really it's really chaos. So she had a next goal in her life to buy an apartment with the 2 bathrooms. So we worked so hard, day and night, and she finally able to save enough money to buy an apartment with the 2 bathrooms. She was happy for a week, and then she had a heart attack and died. The pastor who shared this illustration said her life's goal was what? Bathroom. Bathroom. She lived for the bathrooms. What a tragic life that is. Instead of being able to enjoy the nice house that she had, a nice apartment that she had, she ended up just working hard, not being able to enjoy the blessings that God has given to her. Throughout all her life, she was just working and working for what? Bathrooms. So be content. What God has given to you is indeed sufficient if you look in the right way. Don't compare, because God's grace for you is sufficient for you. That's what 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9 says. This is what Paul says. God said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I'll boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Even the weaknesses that we have, it's sufficient, because it provides God to work in our place. One of the personalities in the Bible that I really like is David, like many other people. And David's famous story is David defeating Goliath, right? And if you read that story, there's a very interesting part. When David volunteered to fight against this Goliath, 9 feet tall giant, King Saul provides him with his armor and with his sword. So David tried them on, and he realized it's too big. It's not his. So he was dragging, the armor was dragging, he could not even lift the sword. So he said, he got rid of him and said, this is not for me. And instead of coveting what Saul had, the best armor in the nation and the best sword that he had, he took up what God has given to him, slingshot and 5 small stones. And you know what happened? The Goliath, that none of the soldiers, not even Saul, in Israel army, that none of them, the Goliaths, that none of them could defeat, David single-handedly knocked them down with what God has given to him. 5 stones and a slingshot. See, that's what we have. God has given to us the exact thing that we need. It may not be that glamorous sword, glamorous armor. It may be just slingshot and 5 stones from the river next to your house. But that is sufficient for God's glory to be revealed. And that is sufficient for God's power to be played out in your life. When Jacob, he stood before King Pharaoh, he was an old man, without much to show. He came to Egypt because he didn't have anything to eat. But this is what he says. He says, my years have been few and difficult. But you know what he does? He blesses the king of Egypt before he, comes out of the palace. He raises his hand and blesses this king of Egypt, this old man who had nothing to offer. Nevertheless, realize that there's a grace that God has given to him in his life, the grace that enables to bless other people. And that's what he does before he dies. He blesses all his children, right? Some of the old folks sitting here might be thinking, there's nothing that I can offer. There's no grace, not much grace in my life. But you're wrong. You're wrong. Even at your old age, God's grace is more than enough. You may not be able to move as quickly as before. You may not be able to lift things as heavy as before. But you still have enough grace to bless your children and your children's children and bless this church and bless the world, because God's grace is sufficient for you. There was a young boy who came to the rally that Jesus was having, and there was more than 10,000 people gathered there, and all of a sudden they're talking about having dinner together, and then he overheard that there's nothing, there's no food, and not a restaurant in 20 miles in radius, but he realized that he had 5 loaves of barley bread and 2 fish. And that's all he had. You might be thinking that, what good is this going to do? And that's what the disciples thought. When this boy brought this 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, his disciples said to Jesus, what good is this? What can we do with this? You know? But you know what? That was more than enough for Jesus to feed 5,000 men and 5,000 women. You know, we may be thinking, you know, we have really nothing, not much, compared to other people. Compared to other people. But don't do that, because God's grace, what God has given to you, is sufficient. And He can feed 5,000 people. You know, we may not have this big house as your neighborhood, but you have wonderful family. You know, wonderful home. Right? Your strength may not be as strong, as good as some other people, but you have faith that can truly move the mountain if God wills. You may be thinking, you know, I'm not as good looking as, you know, Pastor TJ. I'm not as a good hairstyle as his, but you have a heart full of God's love that is more beautiful than anything else in the world. So folks, do not compare with other people. What God has given you is more than sufficient. Be content and be happy and be grateful and see what God will do. See what God will do with the life, with your life that God has blessed in such a sufficient way. Let us pray.